Today's video is what if Dawn and Scott were friends. What if Scott and Dawn were friends? So this idea was by Galaxy-Life-QL4CR. Thank you for your suggestion. Let's give it to the theory. Alright. So I think if Dawn and Scott were friends, I think this would make things very interesting. Because I don't think Scott would still be evil, but Dawn would be his soft spot. It's kind of a weakness. I think Scott would want to take Dawn to the end. I think that's the way I would have this season work. And episode 1 will not change. I think Stacy annoys her team. The rats lose to bad luck. She gets voted off. Again, this episode doesn't change. Scott's first about 15 seconds. Dakota gets eliminated for being the most useless member on her team. The only difference here is Scott, obviously. The Scott and Dawn drama. So, Dawn and Bea are friends. So, episode 3, because Scott is friends with Dawn, Scott wouldn't sabotage Bea. As even though Bea's really smart, I think he would realize that Bea could be a good alliance member to keep around. And I think that he would still sabotage the mirror. I mean, he wouldn't because he's friends with Dawn, he doesn't want to break her heart. And the thing is, the rats were originally going to win the challenge. But then lose because Scott sabotages the mirror. So it's whether or not he would sabotage the mirror. So I feel like Scott would sabotage the mirror because he's only friends with Dawn in this scenario. He's not friends with anyone else. So I think Bea still gets eliminated because Scott still messes with Lightning and Sam to get rid of Bea. Like, even if he didn't have Dawn's vote, because he wouldn't say that he didn't like nature, I think Scott would still be able to get Bea out. So force a scavenger hunt. So when Dawn goes missing, Scott will panic and try to look for her. This is around the point in the season where Scott's personality will change and actually be friends with Dawn. Zoe still capture Maria and Mike are making out for the entire episode. Brooke goes off himself. Cameron and Joe together. I think Scott and Sam try to freeze Dawn. Brooke is told to go out and win the challenge. The maggots lose. Brooke swaps to get eliminated, but he gets swapped over to the rats. Episode 5. This episode will have a difference because Scott does not throw the challenge and Dawn isn't thrown out here. So Scott would explain that him and Dawn are friends now and they should make an alliance to take each other to the end. I think Dawn would agree on that and would sense that Scott has a purplish aura. And while he did originally have a pretty evil aura, his aura has started to mellow down a bit. Scott would be annoyed at this, but he keeps cool as he needs Dawn on his side. At this point, the drivers are pumping Brooke and Lightning pumps the suit, Joe being the suit, and Mike pumps. So I think too much air for Brooke. Joe would still win, and Scott would say how everyone's stuff's been stolen. And I think what would happen is the driver's Lightning, Shearer's Scott, Joe, and Zoe. Now, Scott originally said in this episode his shot was way off, because he was throwing the challenge. Now, Scott's shot would actually be way off because he'd be trying. So Dawn wouldn't be suspicious of Scott trying to throw the challenge. So I do think that Scott would be able to win this challenge. And I think Mike would hit the bell. And I think Scott would win the challenge. Zoe would still turn around and turn and get distracted. I think the maggots would still win the challenge. So it's funny why Scott would win the challenge. They actually lose the challenge. So I think the rats lose. Now, Scott originally framed items on Dawn here. However, I think Scott would do the same thing to Brick, because Brick is a goody two-shoes. And first of all, Lightning and Sam, he would want to keep Lightning off challenges because Lightning's easy to play. Dawn's his friend, and he kind of gets on with Sam, like they're kind of friends. And Scott originally planned to sabotage Brick, but it was only when Dawn called him out, Scott changed that plan. So I do think because he's friends with Dawn here, he does sabotage Brick as kind of a thank you, an apology for getting rid of B for her. So I think everyone gangs on Brick after he gets framed. With the exception of maybe Dawn, but the other three are definitely going for Brick here. Episode 6. This is Runaway Model. And I think Anne-Marie and Zoe would still just have Joe makeup on. And I think the Yeti would still get Lindsay. Joe would try to attract the Yeti, and Dawn could just talk to the Yeti. So I think here Dawn would win the challenge for the rats. So the maggots are going to elimination. Zoe votes for Anne-Maria. Cameron and Mike vote for Joe. Anne-Maria votes for Zoe. This one Zoe, one Anne-Maria. And Joe would vote for Cameron because Joe would vote for someone who's the weakest link because she did originally vote for Cameron in this episode, but then stopped halfway this episode and brought Anne-Maria. So I think because of episode 3, I do think she would vote for Anne-Maria. And probably vote for Cameron. It's 1 Cameron, 2 Joe, 1 Anne-Maria. 1 Anne-Maria, 1 Zoe, 2 Joe, 1 Cameron. So I think Joe would actually eliminate here. Joe's shocked and annoyed at her team for running her off. Scott and Maria would swap teams because I think it would make things interesting. Maria swapping teams. Dawn would wish Scott farewell and be pretty sad he got eliminated. Scott says no worries and they'll protect her at the end and make sure that she survives this. Episode 7. This is where we have a minus struggle thing. So Dawn has said that Scott is swapped teams, and Scott hears Zoe, Cameron and Mike and realises he has to win challenges today in order for him to get across with it, to win the Immunity Idol, for him to win the challenge. And I think Scott would get one across. They get in the cave. Lightning would hold the cave on the rats. Anne-Maria would get captured by Ezekiel. So I do think Anne-Maria would get captured by Ezekiel. And I think Dawn. Go back to try and save her. And Scott threw the statue in the original, so the rats would win. But I don't think Scott would throw the challenge here, because first of all, Scott would know that he's definitely going home once he loses. And this is... we don't know if Scott had found the idol at this point. So I think the maggots would actually win this challenge. And... it's cruelly Lightning. There's no way Lightning doesn't get voted off here because he's the biggest threat. He caused the caveman on the team. He cost them the challenge. But before this can be said, Ambria quits like normal, so she's eliminated. Episode 8 is where Dakota would come back. So I'm actually still going to say Dakota does come back, like she does Dakota Zoid. So Dakota Zoid gets put onto the rats. So episode 8 rolls around, and obviously this is a lot different now. Dakota Zoid obviously wouldn't be chasing for Sam as an individual. Dawn would be paranoid that she's on her own, and Sam and Dakota would definitely choose each other in the end. Scott realizes that he needs to throw the challenge to save Dawn. And I think Scott would still steal Zoe, Cameron, and Mike's thing, stuff from the challenge. Scott would still be misdirecting the rat, I guess, to make sure that the rats would win. Dawn would be confused on how they're doing in the challenge, winning so easily, but she wouldn't question it at this point. Scott would still get them to dig in the wrong direction, and Dakota Zoe would throw the crocodile at the bush on the rats, so they would go through the bush. And because the maggots would dig in the wrong direction and actually have to go around the bush, I think that they would lose the challenge. Which isn't a bad thing, because Dawn will certainly would have gone home. So Zoe, Cameron, and Mike are going to vote for Scott, so Scott would just vote through, and that counts here. So I think as a group of people, the person Scott would choose to eliminate would probably be Zoe. Because this is the vote where Cameron accidentally reveals Mike's personality, so Scott would want to keep Zoe around, where he would decide to get rid of your personalities. So he decides to vote for Cameron, because Scott would know that he wants leverage on Mike for helping him next challenge, and Mike wants to tell Zoe. And if he's trying to get Zoe on his side, getting rid of her would not be a good move. So Cameron's really his only good move at this point is to get rid of Cameron. Even though he's the weakest player, he's really smart, and that could be quite threatening going forward. So it's merge day, the merge cast. Say goodbye to these teams, rats and maggots. So the difference here is we have Sam, Dawn, and Dakota instead of Cameron, Lightning, and Joe. Okay, episode 9. So Dawn and Scott are happy to be together, and they're friends. They're really happy to be together. They hug each other and have a reunion. Sam and Dakota, they're just kissing. They're very happy to be with each other. And Zoe and Mike are happy that they made it the merge. Scott then tells Mike that he knows multiple personalities. And Scott says yes, as long as he helps him win today's challenge. Mike would still be towing Dawn. I think Dawn will be suspicious of Scott now. And yes, what's Scott doing? Why is Mike doing this? Do you realise Scott got something on him? I think Scott's doing the challenge because Mike's here, and I think him doing that, he would still win the challenge. So because Scott's friends with Dawn, he obviously not going to pick her. And because Mike wants to tell Zoe about his multiple personalities, he can't blackmail Mike for something that he's not keeping a secret. I think Scott would choose to get rid of Mike. episode 10. Zoe would be annoyed at Scott for getting rid of Mike, and Dawn would apologise at Mike, saying that she was friends with Scott. And so this is what you've seen him. And Dawn says he's not completely evil. I think it's just the game that's doing it to him. I sense purple aura inside him. Dawn would go to Zoe and says we need to get rid of Sam and Dakota because they're quite threatening going forward. To Scott. Scott would agree, saying we need to get rid of them. But we'll figure it out. Dawn gets the rocket. Sam gets what Lightning got originally, and Dakota would get what Joe had. So Scott's not winning. I don't think Dawn would win. And Dakota, so it's between Sam and Zoe. Now I think Zoe would end up winning the challenge because I can't see Sam being that good here. So I think Zoe wins this challenge, which isn't a bad thing because Zoe most certainly would have gotten eliminated, actually not gotten eliminated. So Scott and Dawn would decide to vote for Dakota because she's the biggest threat, and Zoe would also go along with the vote here. Scott would get rid of, Mike. I think everyone would gang up on Dakota Zoe because she's going to be the biggest threat all around. She's quite a threatening player, and they have to get rid of her at this point. Episode 11. This is the Puke Me Worry challenge. So for the first part of the challenge, Scott would still win like normal. So Zoe would go for Mando, and then it's a race to the end. Scott and Dawn are probably travelling together, I imagine, at this point. And even though Dawn's not happy how Scott got rid of the campers, Scott does kind of feel guilty for getting rid of E. And says that he'll make it up to her, which he's happy that he is. I think Scott would give Dawn immunity. To race to the end, Sam's definitely not winning. Zoe got distracted by Chef. Zoe's Commando. I think Scott would give Dawn the win as an apology for the way he's played the game. But she says, yeah, but I'm gonna she win. Sam's brain's gone to mush, so I think Scott and Dawn would win immunity. Not that really matters anyways, because I think they'll all Sam after the challenge. So I think Scott would end up, Zoe would win the challenge. Zoe with Scott, Scott and Dawn with Sam. In a tiebreaker between Sam and Scott, I think Sam will lose the tiebreaker. Episode 12. This is where we have to get the fire plant. So this is basically like the end of the finale where 3 to 2 people, obviously everyone's cool with each other, obviously Zoe and Scott won't like each other. But only because Scott got rid of Mike. So in episode 12, this is getting the fire plant. I think Scott and Dawn travelled together and Zoe's off by herself. Scott and Dawn decide to work together and they have to get rid of Zoe because she's quite threatening. Dawn can sense the evil within her and kind of the dual personality. I think the person who wins to get the fire plant would be Dawn, because I think the plants, she could speak to them, kind of like the animals. She's very good with nature. So I do think Dawn would win the challenge. So between Zoe and Scott, obviously she's taking Scott to the end. There's no way Zoe's not going to make it. Yeah, she's very close with Zoe, but I think her friendship with Scott's got really close throughout the season. I think, if not just friends, but I think her and Scott are best friends at this point. Even though Scott's done very questionable things, Dawn realizes that, like, in this episode, he clearly threw the challenge to save her. Scott did it in her best interests, even though at first Scott says he did it for himself. He basically tells her that he values her as a friend, and if he could change everything, he would. And Dawn's very happy to hear that, and says to Scott that they're going to go forward together as friends. Zoe wouldn't be annoyed at Dawn for getting rid of Scott, as she would get out because they are friends. And I cannot see a single person supporting Scott. Maybe Joe and Lightning, but I think nobody else would support Scott here. So they made the armor. They have to battle each other. Between each other 3 seconds. They each get winning endings. Even though Scott's one of my favourite characters from Revenge of the Island, I think I would actually have Dawn win it, because I think Dawn winning would be quite ironic. That's it for this video. Thank you guys for watching. This is when I've gone. If Scott and Dawn were friends, so they would have been finalists, and yeah, peace for